Hey guys, tonight we dive into the brutal and unforgiving world of the samurai in feudal Japan. From the crushing weight of honor to the constant shadow of death, this story is haunting, visceral, and deeply human, a defining moment in Japanese history that shaped an entire nation's soul. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what you think about the romanticized view of samurai we see in movies versus their harsh reality. Now, let's begin. The morning mist clings to the wooden floors of your quarters as consciousness slowly returns to your body. It's the year 1185, and you find yourself waking not to the gentle sounds of nature, but to the distant clanging of metal on metal, the rhythmic strikes of early morning sword practice echoing through the compound walls. Your eyes adjust to the dim pre-dawn light filtering through the paper screens, and already you can feel it, that familiar weight pressing down on your chest. Not the weight of your armor, not yet, but the weight of what you are, what you must be, the samurai. You lie there for a moment longer, feeling the rough straw mat beneath your body, listening to your own breathing in the cold morning air. The scent of burning charcoal drifts from somewhere nearby, mixing with the ever-present smell of lacquered wood and oiled steel. These are the smells of your world, the sensory markers of a life bound by codes written in blood and honor. Your joints ache from sleeping on the hard floor. Comfort is a luxury you cannot afford, neither in material nor in spirit. To grow soft is to invite death, and death is always waiting, patient as winter frost. As you rise, your body protests with the accumulated pains of years of training, years of conditioning that began when you were barely old enough to hold a wooden sword. The room is sparse, almost monastery-like in its simplicity. A low writing desk in one corner, your armor stand in another, like a hollow metal ghost watching over your sleep. The katana and wakizashi rest on their stand, gleaming even in the pale light. Tools of your trade, extensions of your soul, or so you've been told since childhood. But you know what they really are. They're promises. Promises of violence, of protection, of an eventual death that you must meet with dignity and acceptance. You move through your morning preparations with practiced efficiency. Every movement has been drilled into you through countless repetitions. The way you fold your sleeping mat, the precise manner in which you clean your face with cold water from a wooden basin. All of it speaks to a life where discipline isn't just important, it's survival. The water is shocking against your skin, but you don't flinch. To show weakness, even alone, is to allow it to take root in your spirit. And in this world, in this time, weakness is a disease more deadly than any plague. Outside your quarters, you can hear others stirring. The compound is coming alive with the sounds of a military household preparing for another day. Somewhere, a senior samurai barks orders at younger warriors. The sound carries on the morning air, harsh and unforgiving. You recognize the voice. It belongs to a man who lost 3 fingers in the Genpei War. A man who compensates for his maiming with increased brutality toward those under his command. This is the hierarchy you exist within, where those above you hold the power of life and death, where a perceived slight could mean your end, where honor is both your greatest asset and your heaviest chain. You dress methodically, layer by layer. First, the undergarments, simple and functional. Then the hakama, the divided skirt that allows for movement in combat. Each fold must be perfect, each tie precise. This isn't vanity, it's survival. Samurai who cannot maintain his appearance is a samurai who has lost discipline. And a samurai without discipline is already dead. The fabric is worn in places, carefully mended. Your stipend from your lord barely covers the necessities, and new clothing is a luxury you cannot afford. Yet you must maintain the appearance of prosperity, of strength. It's another weight to carry, another contradiction in a life full of them. The morning light grows stronger as you complete your preparations. Soon, you'll join the others for morning training. Your stomach growls with hunger. The evening meal was meager, as always. Rice and pickled vegetables, perhaps a small piece of dried fish if you're fortunate. The farmers who grow the rice eat better than you do, though you'd never admit it. Aloud, they at least can supplement their diet with what they grow. You eat only what your lord provides, and your lord's generosity extends only as far as keeping you functional. A hungry samurai is an obedient samurai, or so the saying goes. You pause before leaving your quarters, kneeling before a small shrine in the corner. The wooden tablets bear the names of your ancestors, warriors all. most of whom died young and violently. Your grandfather fell at the age of 32, cut down in a border skirmish over a patch of farmland. Your father made it to 40 before disease claimed him, the coughing sickness that spreads through military barracks like wildfire. You light a stick of incense, the smoke curling upward like the spirits of the dead. You don't pray for victory or glory. You pray only for the strength to die well when your time comes. In this world, that's the only prayer that matters. The compound stretches before you as you step outside, a maze of wooden buildings and narrow pathways designed for defense. Everything here has a purpose. Every angle calculated to give defenders an advantage. You've memorized every corner, every shadow, every potential ambush point. Paranoia isn't madness here, it's wisdom. Other samurai pass you, some nodding in acknowledgement, others lost in their own thoughts. You're all brothers in service, yet you're also potential rivals, potential threats. Today's ally could be tomorrow's enemy if political winds shift, if your lord falls from favor. If accusations are made, the training ground comes into view, an expanse of pactor stained, dark with sweat and occasionally blood. Already, dozens of samurai are engaged in their morning routines. The younger ones practice basic forms, their movements still rough, still showing the enthusiasm of those who haven't yet seen real combat. You remember being like them once, eager for glory, for the chance to prove yourself. Now you know better. Glory is a word used by those who haven't held a friend's intestines in their hands, trying futilely to push them back inside a gaping wound. You take your place among your peers, men who've survived long enough to lose their illusions. The training begins, as it has every morning for as long as you can remember. The repetition is mind-numbing, deliberately so. In battle, thought is death. Your body must move without conscious direction, muscle memory taking over when terror would otherwise freeze you in place. Strike, parry, step, turn, again, again, again. The wooden practice sword grows heavy in your hands, sweat beginning to bead on your forehead despite the cool morning air. Round you, the sounds of training fill the air, the sharp crack of wooden swords meeting, the shuffling of feet on packed earth, the controlled breathing of warriors pushing their bodies to the limit. Sometimes a cry of pain as someone makes a mistake, followed by the harsh laughter of instructors who believe that pain is the best teacher. You've learned to tune it out, to exist in a bubble of concentration where only your movements matter. This is meditation in motion, a way to quiet the constant anxiety that gnaws at your mind. Your instructor approaches, an older samurai whose face is a map of scars. He watches your form with critical eyes, looking for any weakness, any imperfection. Finding none, he grunts approval and moves on. High praise indeed from a man who once made you repeat a single kata for 6 hours, because your foot placement was an inch off. These are the standards you're held to, standards that would break most men, but you're not most men. You're samurai, and breaking is not permitted. The sun climbs higher, and with it comes the heat. Your clothes stick to your body, heavy with sweat. Still the training continues. Now it's sparring time, paired combat, with wooden swords that can break bones as easily as steel can cut flesh. Your opponent today is a younger man, eager to prove himself. You can see it in his eyes, that dangerous combination of ambition and desperation. He comes at you hard, trying to overwhelm you with aggression. You give ground, let him tire himself, then strike when he overextends. The blow catches him in the ribs, sending him to his knees, gasping for air. For a moment, you consider following up, driving home the lesson. But there's no honor in humiliating a fellow samurai, and honor is all you have. You help him to his feet, and he bows, acknowledging the lesson. There's respect in his eyes now, mixed with fear. Good. Fear keeps you alive in this world. You return to your forms, but your mind wanders to the larger compound beyond the training ground. Somewhere in the inner buildings, your lord holds court, making decisions that can mean life or death for you and every other samurai here. The political games played in those halls are more dangerous than any battlefield. At least in combat, you can see your enemy coming. The Genpei War may be ending, but you know that peace is an illusion. There will always be another war, another conflict, another reason to die. The Minamoto clan's victory over the Taira changes nothing for you. You'll simply serve new masters, bow to new lords, follow new orders that may contradict everything you followed before. Loyalty is absolute until it isn't. This is the cognitive dissonance you must live with, the mental gymnastics required to maintain sanity in an insane system. Bell rings, signaling the end of morning training. Your body aches, muscles trembling with exhaustion. But there's no rest. Not yet. Now comes the administrative duties, checking weapons, maintaining armor, copying sutras or military texts to improve your calligraphy. A samurai must be a warrior poet, skilled with brush as well as blade. Another contradiction. Another impossible standard to meet. You've seen hardened killers weep over a poorly written character. Their shame is acute as if they'd fled from battle. As you make your way to the armory, you pass a group of peasants being led through the compound. Their eyes are downcast, careful not to meet the gaze of any samurai. One wrong look could be interpreted as insolence, punishable by death. You have the legal right to cut down any commoner who offends you, a right you've never exercised, but which hangs over every interaction like a sword. They fear you, and you're taught that this fear is necessary, that without it, society would collapse. But sometimes, in quiet moments, you wonder who you really are if the only respect you command comes from terror. The armory is dark and cool, filled with the smell of oil and metal. You begin the meticulous process of checking your equipment. Each piece of armor must be inspected for damage, each leather strap examined for wear. Your life depends on these items, yet maintaining them properly is expensive. The special oil for preventing rust, the tools for repair, the materials for replacement parts, all of it costs money you don't have. You make do with inferior substitutes, hoping they'll suffice, knowing that in battle, good enough might mean death. Your katana requires special attention. You draw it carefully, examining the blade for any imperfections. The steel gleams, folded thousands of times by master smiths, a process that creates a weapon of incredible sharpness and durability. It's worth more than everything else you own combined. This length of steel that defines your existence. You named it, as is tradition. Though you keep the name secret, to speak it aloud would be to give others power over you, and you have precious little power as it is. The maintenance is meditative, allowing your mind to wander. You think about your family, such as it is, a wife you barely know, married for political alliance rather than affection, children you rarely see, raised by servants and tutors to follow in your footsteps. Your son is 8 now, old enough to begin serious training. You've seen him practicing with wooden swords. His movements still clumsy, but showing promise. Part of you is proud. Another part wants to tell him to run, to become a merchant or a farmer, anything but this. But those words would be treason against everything you're supposed to believe. The day stretches on, filled with duties and obligations, guard rotations, where you stand for hours in full armor, watching for threats that never come, meetings, where senior samurai discuss tactics and strategy while junior warriors like yourself remain silent. Meals taken in rigid hierarchy where speaking out of turn could have severe consequences. Through it all, you maintain the facade of the perfect warrior, stoic, disciplined, ready to die at a moment's notice. Inside, you're slowly drowning as evening approaches. You find yourself on the castle walls, looking out over the land your lord controls. Rice paddies stretch to the horizon, worked by peasants whose lives are arguably harder than yours, but whose deaths, at least, are their own. You can see smoke rising from their homes, families gathering for evening meals, simple lives, but ones with a different kind of dignity. You'll never admit it, but sometimes you envy them. The sun sets, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. It's beautiful, this moment of transition, and you allow yourself to appreciate it. Beauty is fleeting in this world, grabbed in stolen moments between the harsh realities of your existence. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, training, duty, the constant threat of violence or disgrace. But for now, in this moment, you can simply be. You think about the path that brought you here, to this life of contradictions and impossibilities. Born into the warrior class, you never had a choice. From the moment you could walk, your destiny was written. You would serve, you would fight, you would die. The only variables were when and how. Everything else, love, happiness, personal fulfillment, these were luxuries reserved for other people. People who didn't carry swords and the weight of bushido on their shoulders. The code of bushido itself is a labyrinth of requirements that often conflict with each other. Loyalty to your lord above all else, yet also righteousness and justice. What happens when your lord commands you to commit an unjust act? Compassion is a virtue, yet mercy can be seen as weakness. You must be cultured and refined, yet ready to become a brutal killer at a moment's notice. These contradictions tear at your soul daily. creating a constant state of internal conflict that you can never show to the outside world. Night falls properly now, and you make your way back to your quarters. The compound is quieter, but never truly sleeps. Guards patrol in the darkness, their footsteps echoing off wooden walkways. You pass the quarters of other samurai, some already asleep, others sitting by candlelight, practicing calligraphy or studying military texts. The pursuit of self-improvement never ends, even when your body screams for rest. In your room, you prepare for sleep with the same ritualistic precision that marked your morning. Your swords are placed exactly where you can reach them in the dark, muscle memory guiding your hand to the hilt in an instant if needed. This paranoia has saved lives before. Assassins are not uncommon, sent by rival clans or even ambitious subordinates. Trust is a luxury no samurai can afford. You lie down on your simple mat, staring up at the wooden ceiling. Tomorrow will be the same as today, and the day after that, and the day after that. An endless cycle of training, service, and preparation for a death that could come at any moment. This is your existence. The terrible reality of being a samurai in feudal Japan. Not the glorious warrior poet of stories, but a man trapped in a system that demands everything and offers little in return. As you finally drift toward sleep, you hear it again, the sound that started your day. Somewhere in the compound, someone is practicing with their sword, the rhythm of strikes continuing into the night. It's a sound that will follow you into your dreams, where you'll fight battles that never end, serve lords who are never satisfied, and seek an honor that always remains just out of reach. Your eyes grow heavy, your breathing slows, and you sink into the temporary oblivion of sleep, knowing that tomorrow the cycle begins again. And in this endless repetition, in this grinding routine of discipline and preparation, you find a strange kind of peace. Not happiness, never that, but acceptance. This is your life, your burden, your destiny. You are samurai, and that terrible truth defines everything. As the sounds of the compound fade into the background of your consciousness, as your breathing deepens and your muscles finally relax, you carry with you into sleep the weight of 1,000 contradictions, 1,000 small deaths of the self in service to an ideal. That may be nothing more than a beautiful lie, but it's your lie, your burden to bear, and tomorrow you'll wake to bear it again, as you have every day, as you will every day, until the day you don't wake at all. The memory comes to you in the darkness between sleep and waking, as memories often do. You're 5 years old again, standing in a courtyard that seems impossibly vast to your child's eyes. The morning air bites at your exposed skin, and you're trying very hard not to cry. Warriors don't cry. That's the first lesson, delivered before you could even properly hold a sword. Your father stands before you, his face a mask of stern approval as he watches you shiver in the cold. This is where it began, this life of yours. This is where the child you might have been started to die, replaced piece by piece with something harder, something that can survive in a world that eats the weak. You remember the weight of the wooden sword in your small hands, how it seemed impossibly heavy, how your arms trembled just trying to hold it steady. The instructor, a scarred veteran whose name you've long since forgotten, but whose voice still echoes in your nightmares, barred commands that made no sense to your young mind. Stance, grip, angle, balance, words that would come to define your existence, but then were just sounds harsh and demanding. When you dropped the sword, which you did often in those early days, the punishment was swift. Not beatings, that would come later, but worse, shame, the disappointed silence of your father, the knowing looks of other boys who were days or weeks ahead of you in their training. The courtyard of your memory fills with other children, all sons of samurai, all beginning their journey into a life they didn't choose. Some were eager, having played with toy swords and dreamed of glory. You can see them now in your mind's eye, their enthusiasm not yet beaten out of them. Others, like you, were terrified but trying to hide it. One boy, younger than the rest, openly wept until his father struck him hard enough to leave a mark. The message was clear. Tears were a luxury none of you could afford. Not anymore. Not ever again. Your days began before dawn. Always, sleep was the enemy of discipline. Comfort the enemy of strength. You'd be shaken awake in darkness, forced to dress quickly in the cold, then led to the training ground where your real education began. It wasn't just sword play, though that dominated your waking hours. There was running, endless running, until your lungs burned and your legs felt like water. Wrestling in the mud, learning to use your body as a weapon when all else failed. Swimming in icy rivers, because a samurai must be able to fight in any conditions. Your instructor would hold your head underwater, teaching you to control panic, to find calm even when death seemed moments away. Some boys didn't learn fast enough. They were sent home in disgrace, or worse, they didn't come up at all. But the physical training was only part of it, perhaps the easier part. Looking back, in the afternoons, when your body screamed for rest, came the lessons in calligraphy. Your hands, already cramped from gripping a sword, now had to master the delicate art of the brush. The characters had to be perfect, not good, not acceptable, but perfect. A poorly written character was a sign of poor discipline, and poor discipline meant death on the battlefield. You practiced the same character hundreds of times, until the paper was more ink than white space, until your eyes burned from focusing on minute details. The sensei who taught calligraphy was, in his way, more terrifying than the weapons masters. An old man who moved with deliberate slowness, who never raised his voice, but whose disapproval could reduce grown men to shame. He would stand behind you as you worked, saying nothing, and that silence was worse than any shouting. When he finally spoke, it was usually to point out failures you hadn't even known existed. The curve of a stroke off by a hair's breadth, the spacing between characters showing haste rather than contemplation. Each mistake was a failure, not just a technique, but a character dot you learned to read, too, though not stories of adventure or wonder. Your texts were military treatises, philosophical works on duty and death, accounts of battles written in language so formal it hurt your young brain to parse. Sun Tzu's Art of War, translated and adapted for Japanese warfare, the Hagakure, with its meditation on death as the way of the samurai, heavy thoughts for a child's mind. But you weren't allowed to be a child anymore. You were a weapon being forged, and weapons have no need for fairy tales. The other boys became your brothers, and rivals simultaneously. You ate together, trained together, suffered together, yet you were always in competition. Who could run fastest, strike hardest, endure longest? The instructors encouraged this rivalry, knowing it would push you all beyond what you thought possible. Friendships formed despite this, or perhaps because of it. Bonds forged in shared misery are often the strongest. You remember Takeshi, a boy from a minor samurai family who became your training partner. He had a gap-toothed smile that appeared rarely, but was all the more precious for its scarcity. You pushed each other, covered for each other's mistakes. When possible, shared food when rations were cut as punishment for collective failures. The first time you held a real sword, you were 8. By then, 3 years of training had strengthened your arms and steadied your grip. But the steel blade was nothing like the wooden practice swords. It was heavier, yes, but more than that, it was alive in a way what could never be. The weight, distribution was different. The balance precise, the edge sharp enough to cut silk dropped upon it. Your instructor demonstrated this, letting a piece of fabric float down onto the upturned blade, watching it part cleanly into. Then he fixed you with his one good eye, the other lost in some long ago battle, and spoke words that stayed with you forever. This sword will take lives, maybe many lives. The question is whether they will be the right lives taken for the right reasons. That burden is yours now. Combat training intensified as you grew older. No longer just forms and kata, but actual sparring with steel, though with dulled edges and protective gear. Still, injuries were common: broken fingers, cracked ribs, concussions that left you seeing double for days. The medical treatment was primitive, mostly walk it off. Unless bones were actually protruding through skin, pain was considered instructive. Injury a teacher more valuable than any sensei. You learned to hide your hurt, to fight through agony, to smile when everything in you wanted to scream. But perhaps the cruelest part of your education was the psychological conditioning, the breaking down of natural human empathy, replaced with a cold calculation of duty and honor. You were taught to see death not as tragedy, but as transition. Your own death was discussed as casually as the weather. How you would die mattered infinitely more than when or why. The perfect death was in service to your lord, without hesitation or regret. Seppuku, ritual suicide, was explained in loving detail. The proper angle of blade insertion, the correct depth of cut, the importance of maintaining composure throughout. You were 10 when you first practiced the motions with a wooden tano, mimicking the actions that might one day end your life. They brought in prisoners, sometimes condemned men who would die anyway, to serve as object lessons. You watched your first execution at 11. standing in neat rows with your fellow students as a senior samurai demonstrated proper beheading. Technique. The sound of steel through flesh and bone is nothing like cutting bamboo or straw practice. Targets. The way a body twitches after the head is removed. The amount of blood that fountains out. These images burn themselves into your young mind. Some boys vomited. They were made to clean it up and then watch again and again, until death became mundane, just another part of existence. Your education wasn't entirely brutal. There were lessons in poetry, in music, in the tea ceremony. Samurai must be cultured, they said, must appreciate beauty to better understand its transience. You learned to play the biwa, its mournful notes echoing through evening practice sessions. Poetry composition became another form of competition. Crafting death poems as if you were already dying. The tea ceremony taught patience, precision, the ability to find meaning in ritualized movements. These softer arts were meant to balance the warrior's way, but they felt like mockery sometimes. What use was poetry to a killer? What comfort was music to the dying? Somewhere in those years, you stopped thinking of your parents' home as home. The dojo, the barracks, the training grounds, these became your world. On the rare visits back to your family, you felt like a stranger. Your younger siblings, the ones not destined for warrior training, seemed like different species. They laughed freely, played without purpose, showed affection without shame. You watched them with something between envy and contempt, no longer able to imagine being so carelessly alive. Your mother tried to bridge the gap, but what could she say to a son being shaped into an instrument of death? She'd touch your face gently, noting new scars, the hardness creeping into your eyes. Her tears, which she tried to hide, only made you uncomfortable. Warriors don't cry, and warriors don't inspire tears. Your father was easier to deal with. He asked about your training, nodded approval at your progress, and spoke of honor and duty. These were conversations you understood, even if they left you feeling hollow. The season cycled through your training. Years. Summer meant endurance exercises in brutal heat, your body pushed to the edge of heat stroke. Autumn brought weapons training in fallen leaves, learning to fight with obscured vision. Winter was survival training, barefoot marches through snow, meditation in freezing temples until you lost feeling in your extremities. Spring should have been renewal, but it just meant the cycle beginning again. Each year harder than the last as expectations grew with your age and ability. You remember the first time you genuinely wanted to die, not the abstract acceptance of death you'd been taught, but a real, desperate desire to end the constant pressure, the endless demands, the weight of expectations that grew heavier each day. You were 13, covered in bruises from a particularly brutal sparring session. Your sword hand so swollen you couldn't properly hold a brush for calligraphy practice. The punishment for this failure was kneeling on gravel for hours, legs going numb, back screaming in protest. As darkness fell and still you knelt, you thought how easy it would be to fall on your sword, to end it with what little honor you had left. But you didn't. Whether from cowardice or courage, you're still not sure. You endured, as you've been taught, and the next day brought new trials, new pain, new lessons in the art of survival. Your body grew stronger, your technique more refined, your heart harder. The boy who had cried at his first cold morning was gone, replaced by something that could endure anything, feel nothing, perfect in its purposeful emptiness. The rituals of advancement marked your progress. Your first formal recognition at 12, allowed to wear certain markers of status. At 14, participating in your first formal ceremony as something more than observer. Each step forward was earned through blood and sweat. Each promotion a reminder of how much further you had to go. The senior students, those near the end of their training, seemed like gods to your young eyes. They moved with economy and grace, their faces masks of calm no matter the provocation. You tried to emulate them, to preview your own future in their bearing. But late at night, in the darkness of the barracks, you sometimes heard those same senior students crying quietly into their pallets. The pressure never ended, only changed form. The training never stopped, only shifted focus. The fear of failure, of dishonor, of not measuring up to impossible standards, these grew stronger with age, not weaker. You learned to recognize the signs of those who would break, the tremor in hands that should be steady, the wild look that came into eyes pushed afar. Some ran, disappearing into the night to become masterless Ronin or worse. Others chose the perceived honor of suicide over the shame of inadequacy. Each empty bunk was a reminder of the stakes you all faced. Your first real combat came earlier than expected, Border skirmishes were common, and senior students were sometimes brought along to observe and, if necessary, participate. You were 15, technically still in training, when your group was ambushed by bandits. Everything you learned, all those years of preparation, condensed into moments of pure terror and instinct. Your first kill wasn't glorious. It was messy, desperate, more accident than skill. A bandit, probably no older than you, charging with a rusty spear. Your parry turned into a thrust almost without thought, and suddenly he was dying at your feet, looking surprised more than anything else. The aftermath was worse than the fight. The shaking that wouldn't stop, the vomit that came without warning. The other students, those who had also bloodied their swords for the first time, looking as lost as you felt. Your instructor said nothing about the tears that came that night, only ensured you cleaned and maintained your sword properly. The blood had to be removed carefully to prevent rust. This practical concern, this focus on the mundane in the face of life-changing trauma, was its own kind of lesson. And so your training continued, marked now by real blood rather than just sweat. You learned to kill more efficiently, to push past the human reluctance to take life. Each death became easier, which was perhaps the most terrifying realization of all. You were becoming what they'd always intended, a perfect warrior, untroubled by conscience, guided only by duty. The boy you'd been was so far gone you could barely remember his face, his dreams, his fears that now seemed so trivial compared to your reality. By 17, your formal training was nearing its end, though you understood now that a samurai's education never truly stopped. You could wield a sword with deadly precision, compose poetry that moved listeners to tears, perform tea ceremony with meditative grace, and kill without hesitation. You were everything they'd shaped you to be, and the cost of that shaping was written in every scar, every nightmare, every human feeling you learned to suppress. Your graduation ceremony was sparse, practical. No celebrations, no recognition of what you'd endured to reach this point. Simply an acknowledgement that you were now a full samurai, ready to serve, ready to die. You were given your adult name, leaving behind the child's name you carried. Through training, this new name felt foreign on your tongue, like wearing clothes that didn't quite fit. But like everything else in your life, you would grow into it, or die trying, standing in that courtyard where it all began, now seeming so much smaller than your child's memory had made it. You watched new boys beginning their journey, 5 years old, shivering in the cold, trying not to cry. You saw yourself in their terrified faces, and for a moment felt something that might have been pity, but pity was weakness, and weakness was death. So you buried it deep with all the other feelings that had no place in a warrior's heart. The cycle continued, as it always had, as it always would. Boys became weapons, weapons served their purpose, and eventually all weapons break. You were simply one more sword being sharpened for use, one more life shaped for death. The making of a samurai was complete, but the unmaking, that would take a lifetime, one day at a time, one death at a time, until nothing remained but honor and dust. As you settled back into your adult body, leaving the memories of childhood training behind, you carry with you the weight of all those years. Every lesson beaten into your bones, every natural instinct overwritten with martial conditioning, every human softness carved away to reveal the warrior beneath. This is what you are now, what they made you, what you allowed yourself to become. A samurai, perfect in its purposeful creation, terrible in its efficient emptiness. And tomorrow, as always, the training continues. The economics of honored letter arrives on a morning like any other, delivered by a servant who keeps his eyes carefully downcast. You recognize the seal, your lord's administrator, the man who controls the purse strings of every samurai in the domain. Your hands don't shake as you break the wax, though they want to. You've learned to control such displays of emotion inside. The characters are written in the cramped, efficient hand of a bureaucrat. Your stipend for the next season. The number is smaller than last time. Again, you stare at it for a long moment, calculating what you'll have to sacrifice this time, what appearance of dignity you'll have to maintain with even less. Your annual rice stipend, measured in koku, enough rice to feed one person for a year, sounds generous to peasant ears. But the reality is a cruel joke. From this allocation, you must maintain your household, your weapons, your armor, your horses if you're fortunate enough to have them. You must dress appropriately for your station, entertain when social obligations demand it, provide gifts when protocol requires them. The mathematics of survival become a daily meditation more challenging than any sword kata. you've ever learned. You walk through your residence, seeing it with the calculating eyes of poverty. The roof needs repair. You can see daylight through spots where the tiles have shifted. But roof repairs must wait. Your armor has weak points that could mean death in battle. The tatami mats are wearing thin, shameful for receiving guests. But new mats are a luxury when your sword needs professional maintenance. Everything is a choice between necessities. Each decision a small defeat in the war against visible poverty. Your wife moves through the morning preparations with practiced efficiency, stretching ingredients that should feed to end the meals for your entire household. She doesn't complain. Samurai wives don't complain. But you see the careful way she portions the rice, the way she waters the miso soup until it's more memory than substance. Her kimono, once fine silk, has been mended so many times that original fabric is more suggestion than reality. Yet she maintains her appearance with fierce pride, knowing that your honor depends on the illusion of prosperity. The merchants in the castle town know your situation, though everyone maintains the polite fiction. When you enter the armorer's shop, there's a moment of tension. Your credit is stretched thin. Promises of payment when your stipend arrives wearing threadbare. The armorer, grown wealthy from samurai need, shows you the respect your station demands while his eyes calculate how much more debt he can extend. The new shoulder guard you need costs more than your monthly allowance. You negotiate, pride burning in your throat, accepting inferior materials that might fail when you need them most. You remember your grandfather's stories of better times when samurai stipends were generous, when a warrior could live with dignity on his lord's allocation. But those days are gone, eroded by economic changes you don't fully understand. The merchant class grows richer while you grow poorer, a reversal of the natural order that gnaws at you like hunger. They sell rice for profit while you, who protect the rice fields, can barely afford to eat it. The irony is bitter as the water. Soup you'll have for dinner at the pawnbroker's shop, a place of shame you visit more often than the temple these days. You unwrap family heirlooms with steady hands, a tea bowl, passed down through generations, worth more as currency than ceremony now. The pawnbroker's assistant, barely hiding his satisfaction at handling samurai treasures, offers less than half its value. You accept because the alternative is your children going hungry, your appearance slipping below the minimum standard required for your station. Each pawn item is a piece of your heritage converted to survival. The social obligations never stop, regardless of your financial situation. A fellow samurai's son is having his coming-of-age ceremony. You must attend, must bring an appropriate gift, must pretend that selecting it wasn't an agonizing decision between honoring social bonds and feeding your family for a week. The gift-giving economy among samurai is its own battlefield, where showing weakness through inadequate presence could destroy your reputation. As surely as cowardice in battle, your armor tells the story of your poverty to those who know how to read it. The Dumaru chess piece is authentic, old but well-maintained. You'd starve before letting it deteriorate. But look closer and the shame reveals itself. The shoulder guards are newer, cheaper construction hidden under traditional designs. The leg guards are mismatched, collected piecemeal as you could afford them. In battle formation, you stand hoping no one notices, knowing other samurai are playing the same game of maintaining face with inadequate resources. The sword dealer's shop is a particular torture. You need your blades professionally polished. Neglect here means not just shame, but potential death if the weapon fails. The polisher's fee would feed your family for 2 months. You bargain, offering future service. Small favors, anything to maintain the tools of your trade. The dealer, a man whose grandfather would have bowed to yours, now holds power over you through simple economics. He agrees to a payment plan that will keep you indebted for seasons to come. You've learned skills no warrior should need. How to mend your own clothes in ways that won't show. Which wild plants can supplement meals without being obvious poverty food. How to make inferior tea seem refined through ceremony and presentation. Your children think these are normal samurai skills, not knowing that their peers from wealthier families have servants for such tasks. You let them believe the fiction, protecting their innocence a little longer. The moneylenders circle like vultures. They offer loans at interest rates that horrify you. But what choice do you have when your lord summons you to campaign and you need supplies? The mathematics of compound interest were never part of your military education, and by the time you understand the trap, you're already caught. Each payment takes more of your stipend, leaving less for necessities, forcing more loans. It's a spiral that has destroyed samurai families driven men to desperate acts. Your horse, once your pride, a symbol of your status as mounted samurai, stands in the stable you can barely afford. The beast eats better than you do some days. Because a samurai without a horse is diminished, listen, you've considered selling him many times, calculating what debts could be cleared, what comfort that money could bring. But each time you approach with that intention, you see your reflection in his dark eyes and know that selling him would be selling the last piece of what makes you samurai rather than just another armed servant. The contrast with merchant families grows more painful each year. You pass their houses on your way to the castle, seeing new construction, hearing laughter from well-fed children, smelling rich foods you can't afford. They bow to you in the streets. They must. Law demands it. But you both know who holds real power. Their sons study arithmetic and trade while yours learn swordplay and poetry. One education leads to prosperity, the other to proud poverty die at the castle. During mandatory attendance, you stand with other samurai and carefully maintain armor. Everyone playing the same game of appearances. The conversations are about honor, duty, martial prowess, never about the empty bellies hidden under silk, the pawned heirlooms, the debts that grow like cancer. To speak of such things would be to admit weakness. And weakness is death in this society more surely than any blade. Your lord, resplendent in armor that costs more than your lifetime stipend, speaks of loyalty and service. He doesn't mention that he's cut stipends 3 times in 5 years, that the economic pressures forcing you to pawn family treasures originate from his fiscal policies. The rice that should be yours goes to maintaining his lifestyle, funding his political ambitions, supporting his own appearances in the capital. You listen with perfect attention, the model of samurai dedication, while calculating whether you can afford to repair your sandals this month. The children feel it most. Though you try to shield them, your daughter needs new kimono for her lessons. A samurai daughter must be properly educated, properly presented, but new clothes are impossible. Your wife performs miracles with needle and thread, creating the illusion of prosperity from scraps. Your son trains with a wooden sword because a proper blade for practice is beyond reach. He doesn't complain, believing this builds character. You let him believe it, though shame burns in your chest. Sometimes you think about becoming a ronin, a masterless samurai free to sell your sword to whoever pays best. A ronin are despised, seen as little better than bandits. Your family would suffer more from that disgrace than from poverty, so you remain trapped between honor and survival. Maintaining the fiction that service to your lord is reward enough, while your children grow thin and your wife's smile becomes more forced each season. The warrior monks in the mountain temples have wealth that makes you bitter. Their coffers overflow with donations while you, who would die protecting them, scrape for rice. The merchants' guild holds more gold than your lord's treasury. Even successful artisans live better than you, their skills valued in gold while yours are paid in inadequate rice and impossible obligations. The social order that places you above them feels like mockery when you're mending your own sandals. By candlelight, you've become an expert at reading the economics of honor among your peers. Who's pawning heirlooms by the quality of their tea ceremony implements? Who's struggling by the patches on their hakama, carefully placed to seem decorative rather than necessary? Who's missed meals by the particular gauntness that comes from prideful starvation? It's a shared suffering that no one acknowledges, a collective fiction maintained at terrible cost. The seasonal gifts required by protocol are another bleeding wound. New Year approaches and you must present appropriate offerings to your superiors, your equals, your family. Each gift must be precisely calibrated. To poor and you show disrespect. To rich and you seem to be overreaching your station. You spend hours agonizing over decisions that in better times would be simple, turning the act of gift-giving into complex mathematics of social survival. Your wife has developed her own network of survival among samurai wives. They trade services, share resources, maintain appearances collectively. A kimono is loaned for important occasions, circulating among families who individually couldn't afford such garments. Recipes for making meals stretch impossibly far are whispered in tea houses. Children's clothes are passed between families with elaborate stories to preserve dignity. It's an underground economy of mutual support that officially doesn't exist. The debt collectors come at night, when neighbors might not see. They're polite. They must be. You could legally kill them for disrespect. But their presence is threat enough. Payment schedules are negotiated in hushed voices while your family pretends to sleep. You promise things you're not sure you can deliver. Buying time with words while planning which remaining heirloom might satisfy them next month. The stress of it ages you faster than any battle would. Winter is the cruelest season for samurai poverty. The cold demands fuel you can't afford, food your body needs but can't have. You sit in meditation partly for spiritual discipline, mostly because stillness conserves energy when calories are scarce. Your children study by single candles, huddled together for warmth, while you tell them stories of their ancestors' glory, carefully omitting that those ancestors could afford heating. You, no samurai who've broken under this pressure. Some turn to corruption, using their authority to extract money from merchants or peasants. Others simply disappear one night, leaving armor and swords behind. Choosing disgrace over slow starvation, a few take the honorable path of seppuku, their death poems speaking of loyalty and duty, while their real reason was the unbearable weight of compounded debts. You understand them all, though you judge them as harshly as society demands. The spring brings temporary relief, your stipend arrives, debts are partially paid. The worst of the winter privation ends, but you know it's illusory. The cycle will continue, each year a little harder, each season requiring more creativity to maintain the fiction of samurai dignity. Your sons will inherit not just your swords, but your debts, your obligations, your need to pretend that honor alone sustains you. In quiet moments, you wonder what your life might have been as a merchant, an artisan, even a prosperous farmer. The shame of such thoughts burns, but they come anyway. To imagine choosing your own path, earning through skill rather than birth, feeding your family without calculating honor's cost in rice. But these are dreams more impossible than any military victory. Fantasies that would unmake everything you are. The economics of honor grind on, relentless as water wearing down stone. Each day brings new calculations, new sacrifices, new ways to maintain face while your substance erodes. You are samurai, which means you are forever caught between what society says you are worth and what the world actually pays. The ledger of your life shows endless deficits, material, emotional, spiritual, yet you continue because the alternative is to admit that the entire system is built on beautiful lies. Tomorrow you'll wake to the same struggles, the armor that needs repair, the debts that need servicing, the appearances that need maintaining. You'll move through your day with practiced dignity, every gesture calculated to project strength while conserving resources. Your children will watch and learn, absorbing lessons about honor and poverty that you never meant to teach. And somewhere in the careful balance between survival and shame, you'll find another day's worth of reasons to continue this terrible, necessary fiction of the samurai's existence. Daily rituals and endless training, temple bell rings for times in the darkness, and your eyes open without conscious thought. 3 decades of the same routine have programmed your body to wake at this precise moment. No matter the season, no matter your exhaustion, around you, the compound stirs with the same mechanical precision. Hundreds of warriors beginning their day in exactly the same way, at exactly the same time. This synchronization isn't coincidence, it's control. Another bar in the invisible cage of samurai existence. You lie still for 30 heartbeats, listening to the sounds of your world awakening. The shuffle of feet on wooden floors, the splash of water in basins, the rustle of clothes being donned in darkness, everyone moving through the same ritual. A choreography of discipline performed by actors who've forgotten their playing roles. You rise from your futon with movements that have become unconscious through repetition. Fold the bedding just so, corners aligned, no wrinkles visible. Place it in exactly the same spot as yesterday, as tomorrow. Your wife performs her own morning ritual in parallel silence. To people sharing space, but locked in separate patterns of obligation, words aren't necessary. You've had the same morning for so many years that speech would be redundant. She knows you'll dress in the same order, perform ablutions with the same timing, leave at the same moment. The comfort of routine masks its prison-like nature. The water in your basin is cold enough to shock, but you don't flinch. Flinching was trained out of you decades ago. You clean yourself methodically, face, hands, feet, each action performed with the same pressure, the same number of pauses, the same attention to detail. This isn't mere cleanliness, it's ritual purification, preparing yourself for another day of service. That may end in death. The superstition embedded in these actions would be laughable if it weren't so desperately necessary. Without these rituals, without this structure, the meaninglessness of your existence might become too apparent to bear. Your armor stands waiting like a patient servant. You approach it with the reverence of a priest approaching an altar. First, The undergarments, each layer tied with knots you could perform in absolute darkness. Then the foundation pieces, building your artificial shell piece by piece. Your fingers move without thought, checking each fastening, each connection point. This inspection isn't just routine, it's survival, a loose strap, a poorly secured plate. These tiny failures could mean death, so you check, and check again, the paranoia of the survivor disguised as professional thoroughness. The weight of full armor settles onto your shoulders like an old friend's embrace. 60 pounds of metal, leather, and silk that you'll wear for the next 16 hours. Your body has adapted over the years, your shoulders broader than they should be, your spine curved from constant load, your hips bearing stress fractures that ache in the cold. The armor has shaped you as much as you've shaped it. The organisms evolving together into something that's neither fully human nor fully object. You step into the pre-dawn air, breath misting in the cold. The training ground is already busy, filled with the sounds of discipline being maintained. Wooden swords crack against each other with metronomic regularity. Bodies move through kata with mechanical precision, everything exactly as it was yesterday. Will be tomorrow. The younger samurai attack their forms with enthusiasm, still believing that perfection is achievable, that there's an endpoint to this training. You know better. The training never ends because it's not about skill, it's about control, about filling every moment with structured activity. So there's no time for dangerous thoughts. Your training partner for the morning is Yamamoto, a man you face across wooden swords for 15 years. You know every tell in his movement, every pattern in his attacks. He knows yours equally well. Your sparring has long since ceased to be about learning or even maintaining skill. It's ritual combat, as choreographed as a temple dance. Strike, parry, counter, reset, the same combinations you've performed thousands of times. Occasionally, one of you will vary the pattern slightly, more to prove you're still awake than from any tactical purpose. The sweat comes quickly despite the cold, soaking through your undergarments, making the armor chafe in familiar places. Your right shoulder protests, an old injury from a battle that meant nothing, achieved nothing, changed nothing. You ignore it as you've ignored it every morning for 8 years. To acknowledge pain is to acknowledge weakness, and weakness has no place in this life. So you continue, wooden sword rising and falling, feet moving in patterns worn into the earth by generations of warriors before you. Between sparring sessions, you perform solo kata. These forms, passed down through centuries, are supposed to contain the accumulated wisdom of warrior ancestors. Each movement perfected through countless battles, each position optimized for lethal efficiency. But as you move through them for the 10,000th time, they feel more like prayer than preparation. Faith-based movements hoping to ward off death through repetition. Your body knows these forms so well that your mind disconnects, floating somewhere above the mechanical actions. In these moments, you sometimes glimpse the absurdity of it all. Grown men in expensive armor practicing for wars that rarely come, maintaining skills for a world that's already changing beyond recognition. The archery range provides a different sort of meditation. You draw your bow with the same motion you've used since childhood, feeling the familiar strain in muscles developed specifically for this action. The arrow flies true. It always does after this many years. Hitting the target stopped being an achievement long ago. Now it's just expectation, miss, and there would be shame, questions, concerns about your declining abilities. Hit, and there's nothing, just the requirement to draw another arrow. Fire again. Maintain the standard that defines your worth. Horseback training follows. For those who can still afford horses, you mount with practiced ease despite the armor's weight, settling into a saddle worn to match your body. The horse knows the routines as well as you do. Charge, wheel, strike at straw targets meant to represent enemies. The movements that once thrilled you with their approximation of battle now feel like a children's game. When was the last time cavalry charged in meaningful combat? When did mounted samurai last decide a battle's outcome? But still you practice, because the alternative is admitting obsolescence. The midday meal is taken in silence, ranks carefully maintained even in this simple act. Higher-ranking samurai eat first, better portions, while lower ranks wait their turn. The food is simple: rice, pickled vegetables, perhaps some fish. You eat mechanically, tasting nothing, focused only on consuming enough energy to continue the afternoon's training. Around you, dozens of other warriors perform the same functional feeding, all pretending this is a meal rather than just biological maintenance. Afternoon brings different training, though no less repetitive. weapon maintenance performed with religious devotion. Your sword must be cleaned, oiled, inspected for any sign of rust or damage. The ritual of drawing the blade, wiping it clean, applying oil with precise movements. It's hypnotic in its familiarity. You could perform this maintenance in your sleep, and sometimes you wonder if you are sleeping. If your entire life has become one long dream of repetitive actions. Military strategy lessons for junior samurai require your attendance as a senior warrior. You sit and seize a position, legs folded beneath you, maintaining perfect posture despite the screaming protest from your knees. The instructor drones through tactical scenarios that haven't been relevant for decades. Castle siege techniques for castles that will never be besieged. Cavalry maneuvers for battles that will be decided by firearms. Everyone pretends these lessons matter while knowing they're teaching military history. Disguised as current doctrine, the tea ceremony provides the day's only respite, though it too is bound by rigid structure. Each movement prescribed, each gesture weighted with meaning accumulated over centuries. You perform the ritual with the same partners, in the same room, at the same time of day. The tea taste of duty rather than pleasure, the contemplation it's supposed to inspire is really just another form of control. Even your moments of peace must follow approved patterns. Evening training is for the dedicated or the desperate. You're never sure which category you fall into anymore. Perhaps both, perhaps neither. The training ground is quieter now, populated by those who have nowhere else to be. Nothing else to define them beyond this endless preparation for battles that may never come. You work through advanced forms, techniques so refined they become abstract art rather than practical combat. A perfect cut that would bisect a man from shoulder to hip, practiced on air because there are no men to bisect. Your body catalogs its complaints as the day wears on. The left knee that grinds bone on bone with each deep stance. The right elbow that can't fully extend anymore, locked at an angle by scar tissue and arthritis. The base of your spine where the armor's weight has compressed vertebrae over decades. Each pain is a reminder of time's passage, of a body worn down by constant use. But you continue, because stopping would mean acknowledging that the machine is breaking down. Night patrols follow training, walking the castle walls in full armor, watching for threats that never materialize. You've walked these same walls thousands of times. Know every stone, every view, every shadow cast by moon and torch. The routine of it is maddening. Check this gate, scan that approach, listen for sounds that never come. Other samurai pass you on their own rounds. Everyone playing soldier in an elaborate performance of vigilance. The walls offer time for reflection you don't want. In the quiet moments between checking posts, your mind wanders to dangerous places. What if you simply didn't return to quarters? What if you kept walking, out the gate, down the road, away from this life of endless repetition? The thought comes more often these days. Harder to push away, but your feet continue their prescribed path, trapped in orbits as fixed as celestial bodies. You think about the young samurai beginning their journey, still believing the training has purpose beyond itself. How long before they realize the truth, that the training is the purpose, that maintaining discipline is the only goal, that they're not preparing for anything but more preparation? Some never realize it, living and dying in blissful ignorance. Others break when the understanding comes. You envy both groups. The night watch passes with glacial slowness. You know exactly how many steps between each checkpoint, exactly how long each circuit takes. Your body moves automatically while your mind retreats to safer spaces. Memories of sake shared with long-dead comrades. The sound of your daughter's laughter before she learned to hide her joy. The feeling of grass beneath bare feet from a childhood that seems like someone else's life. Finally, mercifully, your shift ends. Another samurai takes your place with the same mechanical movements, the same empty vigilance. You return to your quarters, remove your armor piece by piece. Each removal a small liberation. Your body bears the imprints of the day, red marks where edges bit into flesh, bruises from training impacts, the general ache of existence in this martial cage. You perform evening ablutions with the same precision as morning, preparing for sleep that will last exactly until the temple bell rings for times again. Your wife has already retired, her own day of prescribed activities complete. You lie on your futon, staring at the ceiling you memorized in perfect detail. Tomorrow will be identical to today, which was identical to yesterday. The thought should be comforting. No surprises, no uncertainties, perfect predictability. Instead, it feels like drowning in slow motion, each day adding another layer of routine, another repetition to the count, another step in a dance that has no end. You close your eyes and try to find the boy who once dreamed of glory, who saw purpose in the sword. He's buried deep now, crushed under decades of daily rituals and endless training. The compound settles into silence around you, hundreds of warriors lying in identical positions, thinking identical thoughts, preparing for identical tomorrows. The system working perfectly, producing men who can perform any martial task without thought, who can maintain discipline under any circumstance, who have traded their humanity for mechanical perfection. As sleep finally takes you, you dream of variations, a different strike in morning practice, a new path on night patrol, a meal with unexpected flavors, small rebellions your waking self would never permit. But even in dreams, the rituals reassert themselves. You wake, you train, you patrol, you sleep. The wheel turns, carrying you forward into another day exactly like the last, exactly like the next. This is the true curse of the samurai, not death in battle, but life in repetition. Not the sword's edge, but time's slow blade, cutting away everything. That isn't discipline, duty, routine. You become a perfectly functioning part in a vast machine, trained to such excellence that you can perform your role while your soul sleeps. And tomorrow, when the bell rings for times, you'll do it all again, because that's what you are. That's all you are, a samurai, trapped forever in daily rituals and endless training, counting the repetitions until repetition is all that remains. The politics of survival summons arrives before dawn, delivered by a servant whose trembling hands tell you everything you need to know. Your lord requires your presence, immediately. These words, simple on their surface, carry weight that makes your stomach clench with familiar dread. In the world of samurai politics, immediately means you have no time to prepare defenses against whatever accusation awaits, no time to align allies, or discover what political wind has shifted against you. You dress with steady hands despite the ice forming in your veins, knowing that showing fear now could be the evidence that condemns you. The walk to the inner keep feels like a funeral procession. Other samurai avoid your eyes, already distancing themselves from potential contagion. In this world, association with the condemned is its own crime. You've done the same to others, turned away from former friends who received similar summons, and never returned. The politics of survival demand such cruelties. Loyalty is a luxury reserved for those who aren't one whispered accusation away from death. The audience chamber is thick with tension disguised as formality. Your lord sits elevated above the assembled retainers, his face a mask that reveals nothing. Around him, advisors and senior samurai watch with the hungry attention of predators sensing weakness. You perform the required prostration, forehead, touching tatami, making yourself vulnerable while dozens of eyes catalog every nuance of your submission. Too little deference suggests arrogance. Too much implies guilt. The balance must be perfect. Even as your mind races through possible transgressions, it has come to my attention. Your lord begins, and those 6 words contain infinite possibilities. For destruction, someone has whispered poison in his ear. A rival has suggested disloyalty. A jealous colleague has twisted innocent actions into evidence of betrayal. Or perhaps nothing at all. Sometimes lords test their retainers with false accusations, probing for reactions that might reveal hidden thoughts. You remain prostrate, waiting, knowing that even breathing too loudly could be interpreted as defiance. The accusation, when it comes, is both better and worse than expected. A fellow samurai claims you spoke dismissively of a recent decree. The words he attributes to you are close enough to truth to be damning. You did express private doubts about the wisdom of reducing stipends again. But context is everything in political survival, and context can be shaped like clay in skilled hands. Your accuser stands among the watching samurai, face carefully neutral, having made his move in whatever game he's playing. You're permitted to speak in your defense, a privilege that's also a trap. Every word will be weighed, analyzed, compared against past statements and future actions. Deny too strongly, and you call your accuser a liar, creating an enemy if you survive. Accept too readily, and you confirm disloyalty. You choose the middle path, acknowledging imperfect words while affirming absolute loyalty. It's a dance you've performed before. Well, perform again if you survive this morning. Your lord listens without expression, letting silence build until it becomes a living thing pressing down on everyone present. This too is politics, the power to make strong men sweat through silence alone. Finally, he renders judgment, a reduction in stipend as punishment for careless words, A public humiliation, but not death. You've survived, though survival comes at the cost of even greater poverty and the knowledge that you now owe gratitude for this mercy. You bow deeper, expressing thanks for your Lord's wisdom and lenience. The words taste like ashes, but they must be spoken with apparent sincerity. Around you, other samurai calculate the new political landscape. Your accuser has gained favor. You've been weakened, but not eliminated. Alliances will shift based on this morning's outcome. Some who spoke with you yesterday will find reasons to avoid you tomorrow. This is the constant reshuffling of power that defines castle life. Leaving the audience chamber requires navigating a gauntlet of political calculations. Who acknowledges your bow? Who turns away? Who offers subtle support through eye contact? Each interaction is data in the complex equation of survival. A senior samurai who owes you a past favor nods slightly, not enough to associate himself with your disgrace, but sufficient to indicate the debt remains. These microtransactions of loyalty and obligation form the invisible economy of political existence. Stop back in your quarters. You analyze the morning's events with the cold precision of a survivor. Who benefits from your reduced status? What larger game is being played? Your accuser has connections to a faction pushing for military reforms you've opposed. This wasn't personal. You were simply a convenient target in a larger political maneuver. Understanding this doesn't reduce the sting of poverty or humiliation, but it helps map the battlefield for future conflicts. Your wife receives news of the reduced stipend with the stoicism expected of samurai women. She doesn't reproach you, though this failure will mean hungrier children and greater hardship. Instead, she begins planning how to stretch even less rice even further, which possessions might be sold without attracting notice, how to maintain appearances on nothing. Her silence speaks louder than any accusation. You failed in the fundamental duty of providing for your family, all because you couldn't navigate political currents with sufficient skill. The afternoon brings visitors, carefully chosen messengers, from various factions testing your new vulnerability. Some offer veiled support in exchange for future considerations. Others probe for weakness, seeking to discover if you might be turned against former allies. Each conversation requires exhausting vigilance, weighing every word for hidden meanings, calculating responses that commit to nothing while offending no one. This mental chess game is more draining than any physical training. You attend mandatory social gatherings where your changed status is immediately apparent. The subtle reorganization of standing positions, the way conversations pause when you approach, the careful distance maintained by those who fear contamination by association. You've seen this happen to others, now experience it yourself. The polite cruelty of social isolation within a crowd. Everyone following unspoken rules about how to treat the politically wounded. In the castle's administrative chambers, you witness the machinery of political survival in action. Scribes record every interaction, every decree, every shift in favor. These records become weapons in future conflicts, proof of loyalty or evidence of betrayal. Depending on how they're interpreted, you watch clerks carefully editing documents, adjusting historical records to match current political needs. Truth is as malleable as clay in the hands of those who control information. The tea house where samurai gather for informal negotiations becomes a minefield. Conversations that seem about poetry or philosophy carry coded messages about alliances and threats. You participate in these elaborate verbal dances, speaking in metaphors about cherry blossoms while really discussing whether certain officials might suffer falling petals soon. Everyone understands the real meanings, but maintaining the fiction of cultural discourse provides plausible deniability. If words are reported to the wrong ears, your position requires attending planning sessions where military strategies are theoretically discussed. In reality, these meetings are performances where ambitious samurai demonstrate loyalty through enthusiastic agreement with whatever the senior officers propose. Suggesting improvements implies current plans are flawed. Remaining silent suggests lack of commitment. You must appear engaged while saying nothing of substance, a skill that took years to develop and daily practice to maintain. The faction dynamics shift like wind patterns, invisible but felt by everyone. The war faction gains strength when border tensions rise. The administrative faction dominates during peaceful periods. Religious advisors wax and wane in influence based on omens and interpretations. You must maintain cordial relations with all while truly aligning with none, ready to shift allegiance as survival demands. True loyalty is a death sentence in this environment where today's master is tomorrow's. Trader. Evening brings private Meetings in shadow corners, conversations that officially never happen. A former rival suggests a temporary alliance against the man who accused you this morning. Apparently, you weren't his only target and others seek revenge. You listen without committing, filing away information while revealing nothing. These shadow politics are where real power moves, but also where a single misstep means destruction. Trust no one completely, but appear to trust everyone appropriately. Your own informants bring whispers from servant quarters and guard posts. Information is the true currency of political survival, more valuable than gold. You learn which samurai visit geishas who report to rival factions, whose debts make them vulnerable to pressure, who harbors secret resentments that might be exploited. This knowledge is both shield and sword, protection against attacks and weapon for your own maneuvers. The psychological toll of constant vigilance weighs heavier than any armor. You can never relax, never speak freely, never trust completely. Every friendship is conditional, every alliance temporary, every moment of apparent safety an illusion. The stress manifests in sleepless nights, grinding teeth, a perpetual knot of tension between your shoulder blades. But showing this strain would be showing weakness, and weakness invites attack. You think of samurai who couldn't endure the political games. Some requested transfer to border posts, preferring honest danger to court intrigue. Others broke more dramatically, the senior retainer, who suddenly began speaking every thought aloud. Political suicide through honesty. He lasted 3 days before being ordered to commit seppuku for disrespect. His death poem spoke of finding peace and truth, words that haunted you with their implications. The marriage politics affecting your children add another layer of complexity. Your daughter's potential matches shift based on your political standing. Today's reduction in status means previously interested families will look elsewhere. Your son's future appointments depend on navigating these treacherous waters successfully. Every political failure cascades through generations, limiting options for those who had no part in the decisions. Late at night, in the supposed privacy of your quarters, you and your wife speak in code even here. Servants have ears, walls can hide listeners, and paranoia is wisdom in this environment. You discuss tomorrow's challenges in metaphors, plan responses to potential threats in poetic allusions. The mental exhaustion of never being able to communicate simply, directly, honestly, adds another burden to existence. The clan histories you're required to study reveal the cyclical nature of political fortune. Families that dominated for generations, brought low by single missteps. Loyal retainers executed for crimes they didn't commit because political necessity demanded. Scapegoats, the very lords you served descend from men who betrayed previous masters when opportunity arose. Loyalty is proclaimed as the highest virtue, while history proves it's always negotiable. You've learned to read the subtle signs of political weather. A lord who suddenly praises subordinates excessively is likely planning a purge. Unexpected promotions often precede impossible assignments designed to fail. When rival factions suddenly cooperate, someone is being set up for destruction. These patterns repeat endlessly. Yet everyone must pretend surprised when the inevitable betrayals occur. The mental discipline required for political survival exceeds any martial training. You must remember every conversation, every slight, every favor owed or given. Track shifting alliances without written records that could become evidence. Maintain perfect consistency in your presented persona while adapting constantly to new circumstances. One forgotten detail, one contradictory statement, one moment of genuine emotion, and it could prove fatal dot as you finally prepare for sleep. You review the day's political terrain like a general studying battlefield maps. Who gained ground? Who lost favor? What new threats emerged? What opportunities presented themselves? Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new tests, new requirements for performance in the endless theater of samurai politics. You've survived another day, but survival is never permanent, only provisional until the next crisis. The Feudal offers no real rest. Your mind continues calculating, planning, preparing for contingencies. In your dreams, you navigate labyrinths where walls shift when you're not watching, where allies become enemies between one breath and the next, where every word spoken transforms into a blade aimed at your throat. You wake periodically, checking that your swords are within reach, a physical comfort against metaphorical threats. This is the true battlefield for most samurai, not the clash of armies, but the whisper campaigns of castle corridors. Not death by sword, but destruction by innuendo. Not honor through combat, but survival through compromise. The politics grind away at your soul more surely than any weapon, demanding constant vigilance, perfect performance, and the slow sacrifice of everything genuine in service to strategic necessity. Tomorrow the game continues. New accusations to deflect, new alliances to consider, new threats to navigate. You'll wear your political mask as surely as your armor, present whatever face the moment demands, speak whatever words survival requires. And somewhere, buried so deep you can barely remember it exists, the remnant of who you were before politics consumed everything continues its silent scream. But that too must be hidden, controlled, suppressed. Because in the politics of survival, the only unforgivable sin is authenticity, and the only path to tomorrow is through today's necessary betrayals. Women in the samurai household, you watch your wife in the pre-dawn darkness as she moves through her morning preparations with the same silent efficiency. She's perfected over 20 years of marriage. Her face, carefully composed even in these private moments, reveals nothing of the burden she carries. The lines around her eyes speak of sleepless nights calculating how to feed a family on nothing, of maintaining dignity while pawning wedding gifts, of smiling at social gatherings while hunger gnaws at her stomach. She is samurai in everything, by name, bound by codes as rigid as your own, fighting battles that leave no visible scars but cut just as deep. Her day began an hour before yours, always. The hierarchy of the household demands she be prepared before you wake, appearances maintained, tea ready, clothes laid out with invisible precision. You've never seen her sleep past the third bell, never witnessed the exhaustion she must feel. Samurai wives don't show weakness any more than their husbands do. She's learned to move silently through the house, each footstep calculated to avoid the creaking boards that might disturb your rest. This thoughtfulness extends to every aspect of her existence, living life in whispers to avoid bringing shame or inconvenience. Your daughter, now 15, kneels beside her mother, learning through observation the 1,000 unspoken rules of being a samurai woman. Her training began as early as yours did, though its nature differed. Where you learned sword work, she learned needlework, but with the same exacting standards, the same punishment for imperfection. Her stitches must be invisible, her tea ceremony flawless, her ability to appear serene while the world collapses around her absolute. She's being shaped into a weapon too, just one that kills through different means. The Naginata rests in the corner of your wife's room, a reminder of truths politely ignored. Samurai women are trained in martial arts, ostensibly to defend the home in their husband's absence. Your wife's skill with the pole arm exceeds many male warriors you know. Her form's precise and deadly, but this knowledge must be hidden, demonstrated, only in private morning sessions where she teaches your daughter movements that might one day save her life. A woman who shows martial prowess to openly threatens the careful fiction of male superiority. That holds society together. You remember the day your marriage was arranged, how you first saw your wife at the formal meeting where your families negotiated terms. Like merchants haggling over rice, she sat perfectly still for 3 hours, eyes downcast, speaking only when directly addressed, and then in phrases so formal they revealed nothing of her thoughts. You learned later she had been trained for weeks for that single meeting, every gesture rehearsed, every word scripted. Her family's future depended on this performance of ideal femininity, just as yours depended on projecting strength and stability you didn't possess. The economic burdens of your household fall heaviest on her shoulders, though she must pretend you make all decisions. When stipends are cut, she's the one who must somehow conjure food from nothing. She maintains networks of quiet trades with other samurai wives. A few vegetables from a carefully hidden garden exchanged for mending work. Information about which merchants might extend credit, traded for lessons in tea ceremony. This shadow economy keeps families fed while men pretend their inadequate stipends suffice. Her days are filled with labor that must appear effortless. The clothes that seem naturally elegant require hours of maintenance, washing, mending, radine to hide. The fade of age, the meals that follow proper form, despite containing almost nothing, demand creativity that would impress military strategists. She's learned to make soup from bones already boiled 3 times, to stretch rice with hidden additions of cheaper grains, to present poverty as refinement, all while maintaining the fiction that abundance flows from her husband's position. The education she provides your children exceeds what many receive at temple schools. Though she must pretend ignorance when male visitors are present, she teaches them to read using military texts, hiding lessons in strategy within acceptable feminine arts. Your son learns calligraphy by copying his mother's perfect characters. Your daughter absorbs history through songs sung while weaving. Knowledge transmitted in whispers, education disguised as domestic tasks. Because an obviously educated woman threatens those who need to believe in their natural superiority. Social gatherings for samurai wives are their own form of combat. Battles fought with silk fans and poise and compliments. Your wife navigates these treacherous waters with skill that matches any diplomat. She must project prosperity while everyone knows about your reduced circumstances. Display enough refinement to maintain status, but not so much as to provoke envy. Every word measured, every gesture calculated. Performing happiness while calculating whether there's enough rice for tomorrow. You've watched her tend to women whose husbands didn't survive their lord's displeasure, the widow's expected path, immediate remarriage if young enough to bear children, entering a convent if not, or following their husband in death through Jagai, the female equivalent of seppuku. She's prepared your daughter for all these possibilities with the same calm thrown as she uses to teach flower arrangement, death instructions woven between lessons on proper pouring technique. Because samurai women must be ready to die as beautifully as they live. The isolation of samurai women strikes you in quiet moments. Your wife hasn't seen her birth family in 15 years. Distance and duty make visits impossible. Her friends are limited to other samurai wives, relationships constrained by hierarchy and political alliances. She cannot freely walk the streets, cannot engage in commerce, cannot express opinions on anything beyond domestic arrangements. Her world has shrunk to the size of your compound. Her life measured in the small variations possible within rigid constraints. Her health suffers silently from years of deprivation, disguised as discipline. The constant kneeling required by formal occasions has damaged her knees beyond repair. Nutritional deficiencies from ensuring family members eat first show in her thinning hair, carefully hidden beneath elaborate arrangements. The stress of maintaining perfect composure has ground her teeth down, aged her prematurely. But seeking medical attention would require admitting weakness, acknowledging that the samurai lifestyle extracts physical costs from women too. The martial training she maintains in secret speaks to darker realities. The naginata isn't just for defending against external enemies. Samurai women must be prepared to defend themselves against their own class, against husbands driven mad by political pressure, against assault by high-ranking samurai who know complaints won't be heard, against the moment when family honor demands their deaths. She practices forms that could kill you if necessary. This woman who serves you tea with such grace. Your daughter's marriage prospects occupy increasing portions of household planning. Each political shift affects her value in the marriage market. Your wife must prepare her for any possibility. Marriage to a brutal man who will treat her as property, to a kind one who might die young in battle, to a politically ambitious one who will use her as a pawn. The preparations are practical and horrifying. How to endure physical abuse without showing pain. How to maintain loyalty to a husband who shows none to you. How to find small spaces of freedom within suffocating constraints. The perpetual pregnancy expected of samurai wives has taken its toll. You have the living children, but your wife has been pregnant 8 times. The lost ones are never discussed, though you sometimes find her praying at the household shrine for souls that never drew breath. Each pregnancy weakened her further. But producing heirs is a samurai wife's primary duty. The fact that repeated childbearing might kill her is irrelevant to social expectations. She must be ready to die in service to lineage just as you must be ready to die in battle. Her intelligence, which exceeds many of the men you serve alongside, must be constantly masked. You've seen her solve complex household accounting that would challenge trained mathematicians, but she presents solutions as if they were your ideas. She reads political situations with accuracy that has saved you from several missteps, but her warnings come couched as feminine intuition rather than strategic analysis. This performed stupidity is another burden she carries, the exhaustion of pretending to be less than she is. The artistic accomplishments expected of samurai women provide their only acceptable outlet for expression. Your wife's poetry, when you truly read it, reveals depths of pain and isolation that conversation never could. Her flower arrangements speak of impermanence and suffering through beautiful decay. The songs she plays on the koto late at night, when she thinks no one listens, carry melodies of profound sadness. Art becomes the only acceptable way to scream. You observe the complex relationship between your wife and her servant, a peasant woman who has served the household for a decade. In public, the hierarchy is absolute, mistress and servant. separated by unbridgeable class distinctions. In private moments, you've glimpsed something closer to friendship. The women trapped in different cages finding common ground in shared female suffering. But even this small comfort must be hidden. Another relationship constrained by social requirements. The question of succession haunts household planning. If you die without male heirs of age, your wife's position becomes precarious. She might be forced to marry your brother or cousin to maintain family connections. Your daughter could be married quickly to secure alliances before the family's political value drops. Your wife prepares for these contingencies with the same methodical approach she uses for meal planning, survival strategies disguised as domestic management. Her relationship with your concubines, should you take them, is another political navigation she must master. Showing jealousy would be unseemly, but appearing to accepting might suggest lack of proper feeling. She must manage these other women, ensure household harmony, even as they represent her potential replacement. Some samurai wives form alliances with concubines, recognizing shared powerlessness. Others maintain rigid hierarchies. All must pretend the arrangement is natural and comfortable. The religious devotion expected of samurai women provides structure, and sometimes escape. Your wife's prayers at the household Buddhist altar might be the only time her face shows genuine emotion. The rituals give rhythm to days that might otherwise blur into endless repetition. Some women find in religious service the purpose denied them in secular life. Others use religious obligations as acceptable reasons to leave the household. Small freedoms disguised as piety. As night approaches and the household settles into evening routines, you watch your wife manage the complex choreography of family life. She ensures everyone is fed according to rank, manages bath schedules that maintain propriety, oversees homework and martial practice, all while appearing to do nothing more than exist gracefully. The mental load she carries, remembering every social obligation, every household need, every family member's requirements, would exhaust generals planning campaigns. Her evening preparations for sleep are as ritualized as yours, but must be completed in less time, with less assistance. The elaborate hairstyles that mark her status must be carefully dismantled and protected for tomorrow. Her sleeping garments must be appropriate to her station even in the privacy of night. She lies down on her futon knowing that tomorrow will bring identical challenges, identical performances, identical suppressions of self-doubt in the darkness. You sometimes hear her breathing change in ways that suggest tears silently shed, but by morning, her face will show only serene acceptance, ready to begin another day of invisible labor and visible grace. She is the hidden foundation that allows samurai society to function, the unacknowledged strength that enables male pretensions of independence. Her suffering, like her contributions, must remain forever unspoken. Your daughter watches all of this, absorbing lessons about what her life will be. The narrowing of possibilities, the increasing constraints, the lifetime of performance that awaits. Sometimes you catch her looking at birds in flight with an expression that breaks your heart. But she too is learning to hide such thoughts, to bury dreams that have no place in samurai women's lives. The cycle continues, generation after generation of women shaped for endurance rather than joy. This is the reality of women in samurai households, lives of profound limitation disguised as honor, intelligence suppressed in service to male ego, strength demonstrated through suffering rather than action. They are warriors fighting battles that leave no songs, heroes whose victories go unrecorded, casualties of a system that demands their sacrifice while denying their humanity. And tomorrow, like every tomorrow before it, they will rise before dawn to begin the performance again, perfect in their practiced invisibility, terrible in their necessary silence. The memory of your first real battle still visits you in dreams, not the glorious clash of warriors from stories, but the chaos of mud and blood, the stench of men voiding themselves in death, the screams that still echo decades later. You learned that day that combat is not art, but butchery, that honor evaporates when survival instinct takes hold, that the sword skills you'd perfected meant nothing in the press of bodies and terror. Years pass. Peacetime stretches endlessly. You become administrators, tax collectors, bureaucrats in armor. The younger samurai have never seen real combat, playing at war while growing soft. You watch your lord's paranoia bloom like a poisonous flower, seeing threats in every shadow. Fellow samurai disappear after imagined slights. You're ordered to commit seppuku for a failure not your own, and you comply because the alternative, disgrace for your family, is worse than death. Disease spreads through the barracks. The merchant class mocks your poverty openly now. Your children choose commerce over honor. The foreign ships arrive with guns that make swords obsolete. You see the future clearly, the end of everything you've known, everything you've suffered to preserve. On your final morning, you wake one last time to the temple bells. Your joints no longer move properly. Your mind drifts between past and present. You've outlived your purpose, your era, your understanding of the world. The young samurai don't even pretend to respect the old ways anymore. As your eyes close for the last time, you realize the terrible truth. You spent your entire existence preparing for a life that never truly existed, maintaining traditions that imprisoned you, serving masters who saw you as disposable tools. The way of the samurai was not noble suffering, but collective delusion, beautiful in its precision, terrible in its waste of human potential. And now, finally, mercifully, it ends. The temple bell rings for times in the darkness. Somewhere, another young samurai wakes to begin the cycle anew, not knowing that he trains for a world already dying, that his suffering serves no purpose but its own continuation. The wheel turns, carrying more souls into the beautiful, terrible lie of Bushido, until time itself finally shows mercy and lets the age of the samurai fade into history, leaving only stories that will never capture the true horror of lives ground down in service to an impossible ideal.